a hot take that comfort is overrated in watches.
Comfort's overrated.
Comfort's overrated.
This is coming from the man who lives in the country where like all of the most dangerous animals on Earth like live centrally located.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think the important thing is to think of watches like women think of high heels. It doesn't matter that you carried it home at the end. You looked great walking in.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be clip for this week's promo, Pete. So I hope you're prepared to see that. Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly. We are joined by, we'd say in this place, strangers in the house. Well, not really strangers, but they've not been on the show. Apparently, they've been on lots of shows, two of these people together, but this is the first time they've actually met. So we're harmoniously joining the watch community together. So we welcome to the show people that are vaguely familiar to us. We welcome Simon from Escapement24.
Good morning,
Simon.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's the first time that Pete and I have crossed paths we're not, I was going to say in the flesh, but we're not actually in the flesh, are we?
No,
Virtually.
You're still
In the metaverse.
14,000 miles away.
Yes.
In the metaverse.
On something other than messages.
That's right.
Metaverse is finally useful for something. That voice you're hearing is, of course, Pete McConvill. Pete, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Rick. How about yourself?
Not bad. Do we get a Melbourne weather report just to make me feel bad?
Yes, today is a lovely 28 degrees Celsius. I've just got back from taking my dog down the beach, wearing my shorts and flip-flops, so much nicer weather than last week.
Nice. And from the Great Wall of Ripley, all the way from the 1970s, how are you this morning, Mr. Sellers?
I'm well. It's I guess it's still night for me on Monday, so it's good. It's dark. But it's light in the cave. It is very light in the cave. So it is about 11:38 p.m., but we've got light in the cave, so it's perpetually daylight.
I think we do need some mood lighting. We need like some underlighters for that wall, something purple or blue, or
wait till
or like
next
a mirror
week.
ball or something.
Oh, we'll get there. Lasers. Just wait till next week.
Something that we can maybe like put an app online and people can control as they're watching the show. They can kind of make it say things in the background.
Well, that can be for the paid tier, Rick. That can be for the paid tier. Yeah, your message here.
Your message here. That's it. Anyway, so what's to do? Obviously, David and Ariel are both missing. They both happen to be in Geneva. Although I'm not actually sure they both realised that they were both in Geneva at roughly the same time, going by some of the conversations. So I don't actually think they've managed to see each other, even though from normally being 8,000 miles away from each other, they're staying in two hotels that appear to be vaguely next door. But that is where they are. We will hear a lot more from them next week about their sojourning in the halls of watches that is the great streets of Geneva, the highways and the byways, all those people trying to sell you stuff, flog you stuff you don't need and don't want, but still love anyway. And talking about that, there has been a report out about just how well those companies are doing, flogging stuff that we don't want, we don't need, but that we want anyway. And that is the MorganStanley report. This has been going on for a few years. Pete, you have been immersing yourself in this on your own channel. First of all, give your videos a plug, first of all.
Yeah, so Pete McConvill with the imaginatively named Pete McConvill YouTube channel, where I
could never have guessed.
Yeah, where I, as I say in my tagline, overthink, overanalyze, and basically treat watches with far more dignity than they deserve. So that's kind of what I do. And so yeah, the Morgan Stanley event is kind of like it's peak me. All these numbers you can dive into, half of which I don't understand. I'm still trying to figure out how the hell they arrive at their implied wholesale values and why they punish people that sell directly, but they do what they do.
Yes.
So
highlights for this year's. I mean, so this is a report that does it say that it's independent, or what is it? How does it flag itself?
Well, the guy that puts it together, whose name I've completely forgotten, but he owns a consultancy firm, Lux Consult, who also consults to brands about branding, and he also runs a private label Swiss watch company. So if you want to start your own brand, you can get on with this guy. He'll put you in contact with private label manufacturers. He'll consult with you on how to produce the brand. And he also consults with Morgan Stanley, and together they write this report. So he's clearly in the industry, and he has contacts. And I suspect that this report is gaining some ground in the industry, and people are starting to take it seriously. And I suspect that as a result, a lot of the little independents that may have been hiding from him in the past have suddenly started to open the books, because it's in there. Either that, or they've managed to quadruple their turnover in 2 years. Because the cutoff to make the top 50 back, every second year they give us a richer figure. They give us the big top 50 and all the numbers. So if you go back to 2021, to make the list, you had to have a turnover of greater than 35 million Swiss francs. And a whole bunch of companies have just appeared on it, like Moser, Parmigiani, who else? Louis Vuitton turned up for the first time ever. So either Louis Vuitton has gone from having less than 35 million Swiss francs a year to nearly 160,000 Swiss francs a year sales in 2 years, or the data source has changed. And I'm going to go with the data source has changed.
Suddenly they've decided to start speaking and revealing just what is going on. So no surprise that Rolex is top. Any surprises to you, gentlemen, Ripley, Simon, as to what you observed from this report?
Well, I was just going to ask Pete, actually. Pete, I've received a report, a Morgan Stanley report, that's put together in partnership with Watch Charts, using their data. Now, this appears to be only a report on the secondary market. So there appears to be either two separate reports, or this is only a section of that one that you've seen, maybe that I've got. But that tells some really interesting stories as well. I put a video out on that a couple of weeks ago, or using some of that data anyway.
So it is interesting, and that there is a correlation there in what you see with if you like, looking at Rolex on the primary and secondary market. There's a really interesting correlation. So on the secondary market, and I saw your video, Simon. You really hit it, that the speculative bubble, that little pimple on the chart for secondary market for Rolex, really has been sort of deflated. Over that same period of time, Rolex has increased its production, according to Morgan Stanley, by nearly 200,000 watches a year, which is a 20% increase in sales. And yet their increase in market share was only about 1%. And the implied average retail price increased by less than Rolex's price increases. So what that tells me is that over the last 2 years, Rolex has been punching out a lot more watches. They're watches from the lower end, and there's a shift going on where there's more OPs, there's more basic date justs, there's more basic submariners selling. And so to get that increase whereas once upon a time, Rolex just increased their market share by selling a whole bunch more gold. Now they increased their overall production by 20%, and that yielded a 1% increase in market share. So my takeaway is Rolex has peaked. I don't think their market share is going to grow much more over 30%.
And I think that this ties in very much to, so if you saw the recent quotes from Watch the Switzerland Group when so they put out a profits warning in January. And they cited this profits warning as being due to oversupply from Rolex of the stainless steel models and not enough precious metal models coming through, which obviously are a higher value, would give them a higher margin. And
there you go. So I'd just like to say, Sylvan, if you're listening to this, I want you to come back on and explain how that works in your gold thing. So there you go.
Yeah. So I do think that that given what you've been saying, Pete, I think that there's clearly some truth to that. how much that is really telling the whole story for Watches of Switzerland, because I actually think that my own view is that demand is down across the board, and I think that that's playing a big part of their report as well. But I think that they clearly are talking about this, the supply of non-precious metal watches being much
so
higher.
it'll be fascinating to see in a year or two, but it'll probably take 2 years for us to see what it means for all the other watches. Everyone's been saying that the difficulty getting hold of Rolex has had a huge benefit for all these other brands. We'll find out, won't we? If you can start getting more Rolexes, then we'd expect to see significant drops in sales of the other brands. But we'll find out.
I'm not sure I agree that we've reached peak Rolex. I mean, they're opening more manufacturing, they're increasing production. I still think that everything they make, they can sell. It's just a question as to what they decide to make. If they keep making lower margin stuff, then they're going to be pumping out more volume for similar turnover. If that tweaks, as the market has been trying to do, it's been trying to get everybody into two-tone and back into small gold, that if they ride that wave, or indeed in case of Rolex, they produce that wave, then I think you'll see it flip back. It's obviously in Rolex's interest to make as much gold as they possibly can, because they're so vertically integrated. They make profit at every single stage because there's virtually no wholesalers involved in the process of getting the watch.
Would it behoove Rolex to make steel watches and more of them? Because look at it this way: a gold Submariner and a steel Submariner use the same movement, so that's kind of a wash. Now from there, Rolex smelts their own steel. They have their own refineries for gold. But the fixed price of gold is basically determined by factors outside of Rolex's control. If gold spikes, it costs Rolex more to make a gold Submariner, period. Yes, they smelt their own gold. Yes, they're vertically integrated to the point where they've probably made it as cheap as possible to make a gold watch. But from what Sylvain says, there's quite a lot of loopholes to jump through for Switzerland to make a gold watch. And then on top of that, Rolex is a little bit, if they can make more money selling that gold on the open market, they will. They're a massive company, and so they may make the most money selling a steel watch, because that movement is X amount. Then they sell the steel, which is pennies, and then you get up to about $10,000 for like a steel sports watch. Whereas if they have to sell the gold, they're making a larger profit because it's 30 grand or whatever, but there's material there that's intrinsically valuable versus just this large premium on what is effectively that same fixed movement plus negligible cost of steel. For Rolex's financial outlay outside of labor and production costs, the amount of valuable material inside a steel Submariner is very, very little to them, where gold is gold, and whether it's in a Rolex, a Patek, or a Longines, it still is worth what it is per ounce, and so it could make the most sense for them to do what they're doing right now, ramp up production to steel models and get that margin on the higher turnover, because they're going to keep selling steel subs for 10 grand all day long.
And also I'd say there's not really a lot of evidence that Rolex can sell unlimited gold pieces. There's, watch any number of YouTube videos of people talking about what Rolexes you can get under retail today, and it's all the gold stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they can, if they chose to just punch out, and that's why I think they put out 20% more watches.
Well, we have to look at also Rolex as a brand. They're not like Patek. They're like they're a very good brand. They're like a BMW or Mercedes. Good, good quality luxury watch, but like the Rolex buyer is not a Patek buyer. People can scrape together a 4-figure sum and get themselves a Rolex. That is, you're talking gold Rolex prices before you get your foot in the door with the Calatrava at Patek, let alone some of their other complications pieces. So Rolex really is a brand for the people. Having them exclusively transition to like an AOV price of 30, 40 grand doesn't make sense for a brand that makes 1 million, or now 1.2 million plus watches a year. So it really does make more sense for them to kind of do their bread and butter, let Tudor play the low game, but Rolex isn't chasing these people like, Roger Smith or, these small boutique manufacturers. They're never going to be an FP Journe from a price point perspective. So they might kind of know what their target is and are just kind of working towards that and,
If you look at
attaining
like
and
how the
sustaining.
market's changed, go back to the top 50. 6 brands that were in the top 50 in 2011 have left. They're brands. I'm going to do this off the top of my head, and I'll get it wildly wrong. Calvin Klein was in the top. Calvin Klein was in the top 50, selling 300,000 watches. They're gone. Mondaine selling 250,000 watches a year. They're gone. Maurice Lacroix selling 70,000 watches a year. They're gone, and they're being replaced by Grubel Forsey selling 250 watches. Parmigiani selling 3,000 watches. Jacob & Co. selling 2,000 watches. The parts of the market that are really growing fast in dollar terms, Rolex doesn't even play in. It's 25,000 Swiss francs and above that's exploding. And I think that does lead to an interesting question. Is a brand that only makes 250 watches, regardless of their value, really one of the top 50 Swiss watchmakers? Could we get to a world where the top 10 watchmakers are selling 2,000 and 3,000 watches a year?
Yeah, I mean, how much? So, Grubel Forsey sitting at the bottom on 50 million Swiss franc turnover, having sold 255 watches in theory by this analysis. So 50 million turnover gets you into the list. To get into the top 20, let's say, you need to be at 420 million. So I think it's going to be a stretch for a really small manufacturer to boost their turnover that much while staying on such low numbers. But it's not impossible that, from about probably position 30 downwards at about 180 million, that could all end up being complete boutique watch brands that virtually no one has ever heard of. The guys putting the list together struggle to find out who they actually are, because it goes back to the little guy who makes, Roger Smith. I mean, Rogers, obviously this is Swiss watches, but how many brands outside of the Swiss watch industry would feature in this? So a little independent like Roger Smith, of which there are many similar in Switzerland, some of them just selling 10 watches a year could well be doing 50 million
Well, and
turnover.
is it just watches for these companies? Because Jacob & Co., they've got like a building in the Middle East, and they're doing liquor, and there's a whiskey, and there's cigars, and I don't know what Alec Monopoly's doing this week with them, but there's a bunch of things for massive, massive sums of money happening over at Jacob & Co. that have nothing to do with watches. And so, are we counting the overpriced whiskey blend in there as well? Like that?
I think if we were counting more than just watches, suddenly there'd be competition for the top spot, because I think Hermes might be able to challenge Rolex if you brought in all of Hermes.
But what if it's a watch company that packages something what if here's your new Jacob & Co. It costs $4.8 million and it comes with this
That's what
building.
used to happen in Scotland. In Scotland, when they had laws against Sunday trading, so you couldn't buy furniture on a Sunday, but you could buy carrots. So you could buy a bag of carrots for £1,000 and
free
get a
chair.
free sofa with it. It's how they got around it
I think
for many years in Scotland. So it's the same theory.
I think that's a strategy that's open to Omega. They could certainly start selling you houses with a watch in it. It's not a big step up from the boxes they sell now.
Box.
Panerai has entered the chat.
Here we go. So, so here we go. Next year, this list will come out. So tell me who's going to have moved up, who's going to have moved down, who's going to be a new entry. So I'm saying this time next year, Audemars Piguet are above Omega, and Omega have dropped.
Well, I was just going to say,
places.
I want a Submariner with a free submarine. Speak to your...
I'm not even going to say what I was going to say about drug cartels and anybody else on this list, but we'll leave that for a minute. So who is your prediction of who's falling and who's climbing over the next
Tissot,
year?
Longines, and Tag will continue to plummet down. Oh, and JLC will all continue to fall.
Yeah, see, yep. I think Breitling on the way up.
I
Anybody
think
else? Simon?
I think they've stalled. I think they'll stay where they are for
You
a little
think?
while.
Right, okay. I mean, it's a bit of a leap to get over the billion Swiss franc from where they say they are just now. But 178,000, I would not have said that Breitling only made 178,000 watches. Again, maybe it's the market
What's
I'm
actually
in.
more interesting is, according to that chart, the average Breitling sold, the average Breitling leaving a store
Hmm.
is more expensive than the average Cartier, more expensive than the average Omega, just 200 Swiss francs cheaper than an IWC, twice the price
Yep.
of a Tudor, 3 times the price of a Tag.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say because of the BO1, you got to think what do people get from Breitling? It's Navatimers, it's a Chronomats, and now that all the Chronos pretty much have the like a top time is like $8,000. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, that tracks for me. Yeah. That they've gotten up there.
And all the gold that Sylvan's pushing.
Yeah.
Don't forget the Sylvan factor selling all this gold.
Yeah.
Well, that Super Bowl watch was impressive. That thing weighed as much as the Super Bowl players.
Yes. Absolutely. So anybody else? Who else is moving and shaking in this? Cartier
Cartier is going to keep going. They've got a lot of growth left, I think.
I think people like Hermes and the luxury brands, I think, are going to keep growing because of markets like China and India. And India, I think, is set to be the biggest growth market over the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, there we go. Go and have a look at that chart. Just go into Google Morgan Stanley Watch Industry 2023, and you can see all sorts of coverage about it. But you can also check out Pete and Simon's videos about such things.
Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com. Does my voice sound familiar? You might know me from my YouTube videos. I've been selling watches online since 2001 and have grown to become the first place watch enthusiasts visit when they want to make a purchase. Although my education background is in engineering, I learned all my retail prowess from my father, who was also a business owner and watch lover. Long Island Watch features watches that enthusiasts like you enjoy from a wide variety of brands. Throw in fair pricing and the worry-free ownership that we provide, and you'll see why we have remained a reliable source for watches in the industry. My staff and I have decades of watch knowledge that you will be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. We are enthusiasts first and treat you how you want to be treated. We've got the most desirable models from the big players, such as Seiko, Citizen, and Bulova. But you know the real value lies in the more esoteric brands, such as Marathon, Formex, Islander, Phoebus, Laco, Damasco, and others. So keep in touch until you are ready to get your next timepiece. Could be tomorrow, could be next week. Our best deals are found in our members-only newsletter that you can sign up for today at LongIslandWatch.com. Thanks for listening.
Okay, going from one extreme, well, not so much one extreme to another, but one thing about, selling stuff that's, we like to think is rare, but they make 1.2 million of them. In the case of Rolex, we're looking at an article by Mike. Wait a minute, Meteorite is not rare. Okay, and this is basically the, if we think that gold, sorry, I apologize in advance, Sylvan, for always going back. But if you think that gold is one of these things that has a variety of prices, well, Meteorite is, in a different league as to just how rare is it and how much should we really be charging for it and how much should we be prepared to pay for it. I once understood that there was just like one guy in South Korea or somewhere that had all the meteorites that everybody bought. Like it was just this one monopoly where everybody bought everything from. I'm not sure to what extent that's still true. But first of all, do we like meteorite watches? I have a bit of a soft spot for them. Simon, what do you think?
I'm the same as you. I haven't owned one, but there's quite a few that I look at and I think, oh, that's pretty nice. And actually, one of that's mentioned in the article, one of the least expensive ones that's come out recently is that Bulova Lunar Pilot, which I actually think is a great watch anyway, particularly when they made it a little bit smaller, obviously. But that one with the Meteorite dial, I think that looks, it's a good-looking watch.
Ripley, Meteorite, yes or no?
I like it.
I mean, you sit in front of, actually, hold on, I don't even know why I'm asking. You're sitting in front of a stone wall. Of course it's a yeah.
Yeah. 100%. It's like stone and metal mixed together. I'm here for it. And it's from space. Yeah. I love Meteorite, but for me, it's kind of like titanium. There's very much like a price ceiling for what I'm happy to pay for it. And it's going to be, in certain applications, I find it much more appealing than others. But generally speaking, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Meteorite.
Cool, Pete.
I don't mind it. I don't love it. I think a couple of years ago it became a thing for a lot of micro brands to get hold of it, and I think as a result there was some fairly clumsy designs whose only saving grace was there was Meteorite on the dial, and that's kind of stuck in my mind a little bit. So I have noticed that Meteorite treated really well seems to look a lot better than Meteorite that's not. And I think maybe that's what it comes down to for me. Like the Meteorite on those Omega constellations is gorgeous.
But I think what your point was about the way it's been treated is also, I think, in the way that they've designed the indices and the hands and all of that to kind of complement the Meteorite.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think with a lot of, like I say, in the lot of the earlier, like when it went through that phase in the micro brands, the Meteorite had to do a lot of heavy lifting to get otherwise pretty mediocre watches across the line.
There must have been a giant meteorite landed in China at one point.
I'm going to guess the supplier had a whole bunch extra and was just touting it to all his customers.
Yes. So what kind of premium would you be prepared to pay for Meteorite? Like, is it still something that makes you think that it's any better or worse than just a normal dial produced over a brass plate?
I don't really think of the watch in terms of, adding up the costs and am I prepared to pay? If you made a watch that I liked enough and had the right price and it just happened to have Meteorite, fine. But I mean, people spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on watches that do just have a brass plate. So, I think for me, the road to happiness with buying watches is to realize that nothing makes sense. You're either going to spend the money or not. If you're going to try and add it up and justify it to yourself, well, stick with Casio.
There we go. That's advice from Papa Pete, sitting in a corner with his slippers and his cigar.
It's very true. I mean, yeah, I've recently been working on something where I've been able to see some of the cost prices of manufacturing watches, and I think if you start looking at them from a value point of view, you will soon be very, very disappointed.
You have to give context for it. So if I'm charging X for a watch with a black dial, and it's X plus $500,000 for a watch with Meteorite dial, I don't care how it makes me feel. I'm not buying that one with the Meteorite dial. So there is that point where, like, I don't care what it is or how much it tickles my fancy. I just can't wrap my head around that price increase. And when I'm able to see brands like a lot of micros be able to make a Meteorite dial for what is ultimately a modest upcharge, seeing some of the luxury brands, regardless of how nicely they're executed, charging a 5-figure price increase for it just seems a bit bold, where it's kind of like, all right, well, yes, it looks great, but at the same time, you're just trying to squeeze more money out of this one on us. It's not really reflective of what that is.
Welcome to capitalism. I mean, I can go to the local pub and watch some very good folk singer, sing for $10, or I can go see Taylor Swift. Ultimately, a very good folk singer singing, for about the same period of time. But one's going to make $1 billion. One isn't.
Of course, and this is where everyone's just going to own a F91W for all ends of time. But then when you're rationalizing that purpose of a purchase of Taylor Swift tickets, you have to go, well, is it worth this when I could have bought a new Grubel 4C for the money? No, I'm getting the Grubel for myself.
Good stuff. I want to. My question is one of the problems with Meteorite now that it's less Meteorite? Like, I'm assuming that the Meteorite wasn't this nice blue color that Omega have got in their watches, or this nice gold color. Like, it's not. It's now just a patterned dial. In ye olde days, it looked like it was a Meteorite. This just looks like it's been shaded in with a with an HB1 pencil.
To be fair, they're all kind of treated to give them their color. It's kind of like Damascus steel. If you were to just cut the meteorite and polish it for a dial, it would look largely like asymmetric silver. They're acid etched, just like they do with like a traditional blade like Damascus, and that's what really brings out that pattern. And so that's why the same exact meteorite, obviously choice of cut matters, but how that dial is treated thereafter will give you a drastically different impression. So, I mean, at the end of the day, once you realize we're treating it to bring out this pattern, if you're treating it to make it blue thereafter, at this point, we're all just how much we're fudging the appearance.
I think I'm a meteorite originalist. I want my meteorite as it fell out of the sky.
Shard and a lump of black molten metal.
Dug out of a field like Superman looking
still
at
have Superman's fingerprints.
Exactly. You know those Instagram videos you get where they heat up a hot ceramic ball and then drop it on something to see what it does? I want it like that.
What do you guys think about the context for using meteorite in the design? And this goes back to the point Pete made to a degree. So with something like, there's a Speedmaster, I think, or was a Speedmaster that had a meteorite dial. This Below the Lunar Pilot, that it's got a relationship with space and it's got a meteorite dial. And for me, I think that kind of helps to add something to the story. But then I look at watches that don't have any space connection that use meteorite dials, and I kind of think, why?
Yeah. But can we just establish, first of all, that no more watches have a connection to space? They've not been in space. The watch that you're buying has been nowhere near space, and that's not a connection. Somebody wore one day, took it to space. They probably still had a Rolex in their back pocket, just in case that original watch broke. But yeah, I mean, constellation, meteorite, yeah, we get it, Omega.
No, Simon, I am with you, because sometimes you see it and it's just like, oh, what does the space rock have to do with the dive watch? If you choose the helium escape valve or the meteorite, pick your gimmick, but we're not playing like both sides of this fence here.
So which is more gimmicky? Which is the more? There we go. There's something for the chat and the poll and the question and answer. If you're listening to this on Spotify, what is the biggest gimmick in modern watches? And I think I'm being convinced, and Will's not even here to flip flop, that actually meteorite may well be the biggest gimmick.
I'm going to go with German silver, which is not silver.
That is a good one. Yeah. I think I'd still go with Meteor as kind of the hype material at the moment.
Right. Okay.
I can't think of anything else that's jumping out at me. I think the next
Equation of time.
I think the next material is going to be boutique steels. So,
Boutique steels.
and I mean it. So you've already got Omega with its Omega steel, and you got Rolex with its like 904L special steel and RLX titanium. It's actually not that. You can play a game when you specify steel to have a steel that is essentially 316L, but they just test it, make sure it's got a very narrow sort of band of, say, one of the constituents, and then name it and say it's 316L, but normally you're allowed 3% to 5%. We've specified it has to be 4% to 5%, so it's now a new steel. And that's
315.9 steel.
That's exactly what Omega steel is, and it's exactly what Rolex does with their steels. That's why they talk about having grade. I think it's grade 2, grade 2 or grade 5 titanium. It's actually within the band. All they do is they take one of the constituents and shrink it.
Yeah, if you actually look at how many grades of titanium there are, there's like loads of different grades, and I'm like, why has nobody made a watch out of grade 16 titanium? Like,
or grade,
it'll come.
Or grade 23. It's
yes,
23 is what they use in the human body. So I had a bunch of 23.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of 23 in my wrist.
Right.
They took them back out, but then I asked for them after they took them back out. I asked for them back. I figured, one, I paid I paid handsomely for it, and two, it'd been in my body for weeks at this point. Like you don't get to go free, my friend. I'm taking those pieces back. They're mine now.
Yeah, so I'm on Continental Steel and Tube Company, and currently on the website, someone would like to have a chat with me, a sales rep, about selling me some grade 23 titanium. So I think I
I
think
bet they do.
I think we need a watch made out of some random grade of titanium for
Well,
no good reason, and then we'll just build a story around it.
I would agree with Pete. Like, so with there's a reason that most manufacturers use either grade 2 or 5 titanium for watch cases. And even deciding between those two, it really comes down to how they like to finish it. But with steels, it's the metal itself isn't an element. Steel itself is an alloy, and especially once you get into stainless steels. But there's enormous strides that can be made within the type of steel. If you look in the blade industry for knives, there's so many different types of alloys that have different properties depending on hardness or flexibility or what can be done with them. And so I think within the realm of steel, there's enormous strides that can be made that can be less allergenic for people who have a nickel allergy, more anti-corrosive, lighter weight, harder, what have you. So I think there's actually, titanium's the hot new material, but there's probably more advancements that could be made in steel than titanium, which is an element.
Yeah.
Do you know what steel's problem is, though? Is that all of these like slightly different grades of steel, to the untrained eye, broadly all look the same.
Yeah.
So
I actually tried to do a video. I've never been able to get the research, or I haven't been able to get a lot of people to go on the record about whether there's good 316L steel and bad 316L steel. Like there's steel that just creeps in versus steel that nails it and makes it all the way. A few case manufacturers have said, and what it did come down to was country of origin. There are certain countries that'll make you steel and it meets the requirement, but you can't guarantee the quality of all the cases that come out. Whereas you might go for something like German 316L steel, and you can be pretty much guaranteed that if you were expecting to get 100 cases, you'll get 100 cases, no inclusions, no problems, no flaking, no. And one, funnily enough, an automotive hot rod maker was saying for all their structural stuff that no one's ever going to see, they use Chinese steel. For all the decorative stuff that when you look in and it's all nicely polished, it's all German steel.
Good stuff. Right, well, let's move on. We're going to have hit miss maybe shortly, but let's try and get a couple of reviews in first. So, hands on the Doxa Sub 300, some funny squiggly line beta Seddiqi edition watch. I really like this. This looks really nice. I like Doxa. They're very different. They wear supremely comfortably. Gentlemen, Doxa fans, Ripley?
Yeah, I'm always a Doxa fan. If there's only one critique I can have of the brand is they're kind of going down a little bit of that Panerai rabbit hole where they've got like a couple case silhouettes and have just made so many different versions of it. But objectively speaking, this is a really pretty watch. They haven't made it super thick or portly. I think it's a good looking one. So this to me makes more sense than many of the other ones they've done. But I just want to, I'm as someone who's a Doxa fan, I want to make sure that they don't just become like the sub 300 derivative brand in the same way that Panerai is the Luminor, the Radiomir.
Yeah, they were going through that stage whereby they were just, when they got into the colored stuff, everything was being produced in 5 different colors and it was just completely flooding. And you were getting, I myself went and looked at a Doxa. I thought, I really like that one. And I thought, I really like that one as well. Oh, that was good too. I ended up buying none of them and just leaving because it was just like complete. Well, what's the difference between this 300 and this 600 or this 1200? They all feel the same. They'll wear well. So just complete overload. Simon, Doxa
yeah,
fan?
I'm a Doxa fan, as you know. I think for me though, the appeal of Doxas is that very rugged tool diver look, and I do like some of when they've kind of ventured beyond that in terms of decorating the watches a little bit. I say decorating in a loose term, but when they've added the gold accents on, they had the black and gold one, didn't they? That was released at Dubai Watch Week, I think. And I really like what they're doing with some of the color variants on the newer 300s. This one, I think, takes the design a little bit too far for me, makes it look a bit too dressy so it's not really what I want from my Doxa, I think. And I think it all really comes down to that dial, which looks fantastic. And there are for sure plenty of dive watches out there that have sunburst dials and decorative dials, but this one I'd like it to be a bit more Doxa, a bit less decorative.
Bit more Doxa.
Yeah.
Pete, you live in a country whereby there is actually a chance of using this to go diving and not freeze to death.
That's right. No, I'm a fan. I like it. I think I agree with everything that people have said about the difficulty Doxa has in being more than just a niche. But then on the other hand, they do that niche really well. This one's very pretty. So I do like this one.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And $3,200. It feels in this market competitive. I mean, maybe 5 years ago, you'd be looking at this going, it's got a Sellita SW201. What on earth are we paying $3,000 for it? But nowadays, this just seems to be the price point.
I agree. I think that word competitive is probably better than value. It is competitive. If you look at the sorts of watches which you would be paying at about this price, it's not that far off the mark.
And it's limited edition, 50 pieces, so you ain't going to see another one of these unless you're probably
one of the
Seddiqis.
Seddiqis.
To a Seddiqi, or one of the Seddiqis.
They've got a big family.
A big family. Yeah, well, that's the other thing is there's quite a crowd of Seddiqis, so presumably like 49 of them are probably being sold internally. There's like one available that's going around the press.
That's why it's the Seddiqi limited edition. You have to be a Seddiqi to have one.
Yeah, Seddiqi, yes. They haven't actually told you that bit in the press release. It's limited to Seddiqis. There we go. Cool. Well, something out of Scotland. Hands-on Pollen Modu, a Hong Kong dial for the Armoury. Now, for those that don't know the story of Paulin, so Paulin and Ordain have always been linked via familial ties. They're now part of the same business. So Anne Ordain, whose waiting list goes to 2027 or something ridiculous, have brought Paulin into the fold in order to actually sell something and get some cash into the business with something a bit more mass produced. And they've done this collab with Armoury. I do like Paulin. This feels like a bit of a dog's breakfast of a watch to me, but it's verging on the but it turns out I quite like dog's breakfasts. It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. So I mean, for me, size-wise, no use, but it's from Glasgow. Like I drive past where they used to have their showroom, every other day. I know the people involved. What do we think?
I like it. It feels a little bit expensive for it is, and there's a bunch of things I could nitpick about it. But at the end of the day, I just kind of like it. It's kind of a weird, charming piece. It's like what $600 for an ETA quartz movement, and you're like, all right, and it's got like a acrylic crystal up front, sapphire crystal in the back, and you're like, well, that's weird. Then I'm like, well, but actually, that's like my Speedmaster, so not really going to nitpick too hard about that. And then I'm looking at it some more, and I'm like, I kind of like that. I can see the ETA movement. That's kind of cool. And as someone who's half white, half Japanese, the Japanese and the Chinese use the same numerical characters. So I'm looking, it's a Hong Kong dial. We can call it a Tokyo dial for me. I'm looking at it going, that's half and half. I'm half and half. This isn't too bad. I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, I love it. Have a more of a depth rating. I'm like, well, let's be real. I don't really need that. And then I kind of like the way that the case is modular. They've done an interesting thing. The case itself, that black internal section is separate from the silver part that's the lugs. And they do this so they can use the same external case with different movements. This is the base level one that has a quartz one. They do one with a mechanical one, presumably be thicker. But it kind of makes for an interesting dynamic thing. So there's a lot about it that I want to not like. And then at the end of the day, I just kind of like it. So there's nothing that I can really point to for like why I do. I don't know if it's totally what I'd spend my $600 on, because that's getting to be a really competitive price point these days. But when it's in the hand, it's just kind of a charming piece, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just different. So I weirdly like it, even though I on paper shouldn't.
I do like the fact you managed to pair it, because it's your photos with the only thing you own that's got a wee yellow stripe in it, just to match the watch face. So well done in finding a jacket with a yellow hoop round it.
How nice of you to think that's the only yellow thing I own.
Okay, so Pete,
I like it. It's sort of in that zone of where I'm happy to spend money on something that's just fun. So it's kind of in that zone where I'm happy to buy a Mr. Jones watch, or I'm happy to buy this, or I'm happy to buy the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, which is, or the Swatch Thrifty Fathoms. It's in that zone where, am I prepared to spend $600 on this? Yep, and I love it. It's kind of fun, charming. There's a word.
Yeah, I love it as well. I mean, look, I just really like quirky watches. Kind of almost the quirkier the better. This one is definitely quite quirky. I don't think the design of the dial entirely hangs together in every element for me, but notwithstanding, love the colour, love the strap. I think the strap is really nice on it for $600 as well. I really like what they've done with the fact that you've got an exhibition case back on a Quartz watch. I mean, it's just
it does work really well.
Yeah, it really does. And as Pete said, at that price point, I could see myself buying one of these. And I think what they've done as well is that they are clearly known as a kind of small output boutique brand. But it's interesting they've done something at this price point which almost democratizes that. And I think that it's got a lot of appeal to me, probably other people, for that reason as well.
Ripley, you might know better than the rest of us, but is this has the Quartz display case back? Has that quartz movement been dressed up in any way?
No, ETA makes really pretty movements.
Is that just what it looks
no,
like?
No, ETA makes pretty movements. The first resin watch I ever saw, he specifically used a quartz ETA, and it had the whole watch is clear, because the standard off-the-shelf ETA quartz movement that's hidden away inside countless pieces has these nice little gold finish bridges and blue parts, and it's this good looking piece. It's the Ronda ones that look a little bit more simplistic. But yeah, the standard ETA caliber just looks like this. It's not dressed up in any type of capacity, but I really do love that they've showcased the quartz aspect of it, because there's only a handful of brands that do this. And brand Seiko does it on a small number of their watches. And I really, really wish that they did it on more, because brand Seiko does quartz so special. Please show it off. Don't give me another lion. I
think we just need to find someone that can do, boutique inscribed watch batteries, so as you can buy a watch battery that's got something on it other than Renata.
Well, I did notice even the battery is made in Switzerland.
Well, I thought about that as well when I was looking at it. If I had that watch when I'd replace the battery, I'd go ahead and put a wee little sticker on the back of that battery, a little smiley face or something, and just have a
smiley face. Absolutely, it should come with a pack of emoji stickers that you can put on your battery to your heart's content. Good stuff. Right. Well, for those of you that are staying tuned, we're going to have some hit miss maybe and let the guys in. Well, we're now joined by the gruesome, foursome, ninesome, how many people we've got in this call this morning. We're currently one missing. Kevin has gone rogue. He's in hyperspace, metaverse somewhere, but he's not here, but he may join us, but we'll see what happens. But let's go around the room as to who we've got and what they're wearing and where they are. Mr. Pete McConvill, well, you are Pete. You've already been on the show this morning, but where are you and what are you wearing?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I am wearing this. It's my IWC RAAF automatic, a special watch, kind of like a Mark 19 that wasn't released, that IWC did for current and former serving members of the Royal Australian Air Force.
You're just making up numbers. There's a 19. He's a break. Good stuff. Very nice watch. Next up on my screen is Simon. Where are you and what are you wearing?
So I'm in sunny Wales, which I can't often say that's for sure. Certainly. Speaking of which, Ripley, haven't you got lots of snow, by the way, at the moment?
Snow in Los Angeles?
I thought I heard that there was snow in LA. No, maybe I didn't. Getting confused. Anyway, I'm in sunny Wales, and I am wearing the D1 Milano Sketch, which I did a video on actually last week, and Yeah, it's. I'm a bit like David. I don't often wear watches when I'm in the house. This one I have been wearing because it's so light. It's like 45 grams when it's sized for my wrist. So you don't even know that you're wearing the thing. And if I bash it into something or scratch it on the side of my MacBook Pro, it really doesn't matter. So yeah.
And is it made from cardboard? Because it looks like those. I don't know who was at what show. The Ulysses Nardin stand last year at Watches and Wonders had the guy that made the kind of cardboard watches. Oh, somebody just dropped something. Not sure who that was. But normally, if you're in a bar, everybody goes "way" when somebody smashes the stuff. But it does look super cool. I've reached out to them to go and try and have a shot of one. Right, Ripley, where are you? What are you wearing?
I'm in Los Angeles. It's not snowing. I mean, we don't even do well in the rain out here. If it was snowing, it would be like you would be hearing about it. It would absolutely be yes. And I'm wearing the RZE Fortitude GMT. We've got a review of this one up on aBlogtoWatch. It's tons of value, like under $700. Proper flyer style GMT movement, full titanium.
Good stuff. To our first people that we've not already heard from on the podcast today. Leslie, where are you and what are you wearing?
I'm in Dublin, Ireland, and I'm wearing a 47-0, which is made by an Irish friend of mine who lives in France, and it's an ETA movement and ETA base movement, SW111 or whatever. Automatic. It's really pretty. He stamps out the dials himself, and then pretty much obviously buys in the movements, but a lot of the rest of the work is himself. He's an interesting guy, interesting story.
Cool, very nice watch indeed, very nice. Okay, next up we have young William. Young William, where are you?
Good morning, Emma. I'm coming to you from a sunny Kent. And this morning I'm wearing my Rolex Oyster Perpetual vintage 36mm on a what should be nameless rubber strap. Because I've been chastised for name dropping before.
We don't mind you sharing who it is. We then just send him a bill. That's the thing.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to bankrupt your watch strap supplier, then just name them away, and then we'll just start sending them invoices. That's absolutely fine.
I'm sure there's a good margin to be made there somewhere. And I've got, just incidentally, we're talking about knocking the watch and things like that. I've got the rubber strap on. One of the main reasons is because using the MacBook with its very sharp metal edges, I find destroys bracelets. Everybody probably has this issue in some way or another. But I just found that quite interesting. That I'm just now on rubber straps or G-Shocks if I'm using the laptop.
I'm going to invent a little rubber shield to go over the MacBook or something. That is
genius.
Or just buy a Dell that's made of plastic. Alon, where are you today and what are you wearing?
Good morning, William. You made my day with some orange Dutch pride here. And Apple is doing that on purpose to sell more straps for their Apple Watch. I'm rocking my roulette dial on the 6000 Calatrava by Patek.
Yeah, that's not got a rubber strap on it, that's for sure.
That's sure. No, I won't name drop, but I actually don't like the straps Patek made, so I put one made by H for PF.
Yeah, very good, very good. Right, now let's get stuck into some hit miss maybe. And first up today is from Norqain. The Norqain Adventure Sport Chrono 44mm and Adventure Sport Chrono Day Date 41mm limited edition watches. So it's two watches. So you can give your judgment across the range. They seem to have bundled them together in a release. So we will bundle them together in terms of looking at them. So yeah, Norqain, let's have a look at this. Give us your hit, your miss, or your maybe. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, I'm needing to find mine. I'm not organized enough. It's a miss for me. So miss, maybe, some hums, some maybes. Not a lot of hits there. So let's go round the room. Pete, why is this watch a maybe? I think you voted.
I really wanted to like it, and there's bits of it that I do like the date is at 4:30 as God intended, but there's other parts of the watch which it just doesn't quite get there. I like I kind of like the dial patternation, but I don't love it. I kind of like some of the indices, but I don't love them. It's a maybe. I'm sure that there's someone out there that will love this watch, but it's not me.
It's not you. Simon, first of all, hit miss maybe on Pete is 4:30 where the date should be as God intended. I actually agree with Pete. I think 4:30 is a perfectly reasonable place for a date. How did you vote in this watch, and what do you think of Pete's date resume?
Right, I'm going to do a flip-flop Will style here, because the more I look at this watch, the more I've decided that, and listening to Pete, that instead of a maybe, it's a miss for me.
All right.
One of the reasons is size. It's 44 mil. I mean, I've got, I've seen insects with bigger wrists than I've got. So 44 mil is just never going to fly for me. And I think there's something about the design of this, and I don't know whether it's that the black case with that turquoise dial, I don't know, combined with the fact that it sort of has this, Daytona sort of look to it. It looks a little bit like a cheap watch that something trying to be something that it isn't. I think Norqain do some great designs. Love some of their other stuff, but this one just looks like they got the junior to design it.
An Office Junior design, Ripley. What did you think?
I mean, Norqain makes nice watches. These certainly wouldn't be the ones I'd be reaching for. I'm so sick of that Tiffany color. I'm not even going to comment on that. Like, I don't even want to see it on Tiffany & Co. boxes. Like, if you aren't Tiffany & Co., please give that brand back their color and stop. Give that paint section a rest. Go move on to something else. But it's probably a very good watch. I said it's a maybe because I promise you it's going to feel very nice in the hand. And if you like the way that these look, I think the green and gold one looks better, but it just feels very expensive. It's like over $6,000 on a bracelet for one of them. And like at the end of the day, like, I mean, yes, everything's getting more expensive. Like, but to me, that's like Breitling money. I should be getting like a good Monaco, like I just have a really hard time wrapping my head around like $6,000 plus for a Norqain when I feel like I should be picking up 2 watches at the Tag Heuer boutique for that money. And, it just doesn't seem to stack up for like, an SW500 chronograph.
Yeah. We'll talk about the good Monaco thing shortly and whether that exists. But in the meantime, Leslie, how did you vote?
I voted his. I mean, I think it's kind of cute. I don't know. These are all very complainy, I love the way they go. I even like the one with the date in the middle of the 3:00 and. They colored the date as well, which I like. I mean, the window is the right color. It's it's $5,000, but look, I mean, Jesus, look at how much you have to pay for all the other famous brands. I think they deserve a bit of love.
Bit of love. Will, are you loving Norqain?
I am not. There is no love coming from me for this watch. It was something that that's been said. It may be a bit harsh, but it reminded me of what they call a mall watch, which is kind of the watch that, which is also a watch maybe your mum goes out and goes, well, I saw you like that Daytona type of watch and that fancy brand. And this looks just like it. And there's no difference, but there is a big difference. So it's not just the fact that it's a chronograph. The date should be at 3:00. The color isn't for me because I'm not in Miami and we don't get enough sunshine even in the south of England to justify that bright color. I agree to surrendering colors back to Tiffany. So for me, it was a miss. It's just, even with the expensive watches now, it's just a bit too expensive as well. If it was around, say, $800 or something like that, then I'd probably say yes. But I appreciate it's probably a very nicely made watch, etc. But it's not for me.
Alan, you're a retailer. Would you expect these to be going out the door, or is it going to be a tricky proposition? This versus a Breitling at a similar price, or a Tag Heuer, or whatever?
So first of all, I missed the flip flopping this morning. By coincidence, Norqain visited me last week when exactly on the day that it dropped that watch. So
you've bought all
fact,
50.
Pardon?
You've bought all 50 of the limited
No,
edition.
I'm not a retailer. I'm not getting on board. I am good friends with Teddy Schneider. I've been following them from day one. I love what they do. These models, in my humble opinion, don't have enough character. I sent a picture in our WhatsApp group showing the wild one, which we all know from both Andrew McCutcheon, who has been pushing it very hard, and then Mark Wahlberg. So that watch is famous because the infamous Jean-Claude Biver helped the Kuffer family, or Ben Kuffer, to develop it. In my humble opinion, yeah, it could be a baby Hublot, but has more character. What I think Norqain should have never done is, if that's becoming an icon and that colorway is their most popular model, the wild one, don't copy paste it now on a model that doesn't really work for you. So definitely a miss for me personally, because I had to adjust to this game, right? Usually when people ask what do you think about it, I have 3 hats on: retailer, collector, and then I try to be a friend, because when you give advice to somebody, you need to put yourself in their shoes. So for this game, for me, hardcore miss. The wild one I might consider if I was looking at Norqain.
Yeah. Kevin, you have joined us from the dungeon that you were being kept in.
Absolutely.
What do you think of this?
I thought it was a maybe, to be perfectly honest. I think the first thing I look at was the dial, and it reminded me of the IWC Engineer, that horizontal stripes. It's now going diagonal. The colour, I agree with Will. It's not really going to sell very much in the UK because of the weather we have, and certainly even less in Scotland, because you're just going to be raining all the time. And the subdials look a couple of mil too big, maybe just a mil too big, the counters. So it's a watch, basically. It's okay, but not for me.
Right, let's move on, and we will have a look. Little change of plan. We will have a look at this, the Certina DS Action GMT Powermatic 80 watch. Ripley, you reviewed this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
This is so Certina, they're kind of in this weird lower price of Swatch group, but there's a lot of value for the money there. This uses the GMT version of the Powermatic 80, so it's a proper traveler style GMT with the adjustable local hour hand. Comes in 3 different colorways. Sapphire bezel, decent bracelet. It uses single-sided screws, doesn't have an extension, but it's hair over $1,000. What are you really looking for at that price point? I think it's kind of a great sort of middle ground between those who want something a little bit more elevated than like the Miyota 9075 sub 1000 category, but don't want to step it up to like a Longines area. It's kind of in that nice in between. I think it's a great watch for the money. Really competitive with kind of the Mitos and some of those other Swatch Group brands. And Certina's other GMT was a internal fixed bezel or internal 24-hour bezel at 43 millimeters. So this one with the external bezel at 41, it's significantly smaller. And again, it's a pretty humble price point at about, $1,200 US.
Good stuff. So let's give it a vote. A hit, a miss, or a maybe. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, some hits, some misses. Nobody sitting on the fence yet. Is Simon sitting on the fence? So no, it's either hits or misses. So Pete, the reason you go first is you're the first person on my screen. You're far ahead in time being in Australia, so you get to go first again.
That's right. So speaking from the future, I'll say it's a miss. Yeah, the only good things I can ever say about this watch always end with "for the price," and that's never a good place to be. It's generic. It looks the same as a million other watches. I don't know why I'd buy it.
Simon, Simon, can you give us a reason for buying it?
I'm with Pete on this one. I just think that I'm getting a bit tired of GMTs, full stop. I think we've seen so many of them, and so many of them at this kind of price point too. Just, we don't need another one. And I think, you look at this, and then if you are in this kind of price range looking for a GMT, then I think Glycine does a way better job for less than half the price, quite frankly. It's things like on the bracelet, the clasp that they've used is that sort of quite generic sort of Seiko style clasp from many years ago that must cost them a couple of dollars at most to make. Just doesn't do it for me. Sorry.
Ripley.
It's a hit for me. Objectively, it's a hit for what the watch is. My biggest problem with some of these is with a lot of watches in general, I just wish they were a little bit more unique with their designs. It's supposed to be a little bit generic. They're selling a GMT watch to the masses for $1,000. I'm not looking for some super avant-garde case, but why did they do the Rolex colors? That's what bothers me so much. Like, you got a Pepsi, you got the Sprite, you got the Droop Beer. Like, give me a different color, and that's like the one irksome point. I wish if they had come up with a more unique colorway, these could very much stand on their own 2 feet as kind of Certina's version of that. But when you look at, it's going to be about $200 more than what you might pay for a Miyota 9075. You get twice the power reserve. You get some Swissness to it. Sapphire bezel, sapphire case back, proper movement. It checks a lot of boxes for the money. There's that forever caveat. But, I objectively, it's a hit. It just rubs me a little bit the wrong way that they weren't a little bit more just unique with their own colorway. Like, give us blue and orange instead of red and blue, or, give us black and yellow instead of green and black, but just do something a little bit different.
Will, what would you have done differently on this?
So I said this was a hit, and to jump on the bandwagon of everybody else for the money. It's I think it's been very carefully designed and very well designed. So whenever I see Certina, it is always in the mid-range jewelry stores you see, either in shopping malls or in towns or something like that. And to be honest with you, the window is always heaving with a huge selection of lots of different watches, and it has to do something quite special to grab your attention, particularly because at that price point, a lot of people will not be watch geeks and watch nerds, and they will not be researching what the best movement will be, etc., etc. They want something that looks like something that they've seen perhaps before, or looks good and sporty and ticks a lot of boxes. And for that, it does. Is this perhaps a sneak peek at what Rolex may do with the green bezel, as in a half and half green bezel in the future? I'm sure that I'm sure Rolex is attentively studying what Certina does to guide its future design. But yeah, I can't fault it for the money. I suppose, it could have done something more adventurous, and it would be really interesting to see different colors. And I've seen other watches, it might not be Certina, but other watches around this price point that have started to do their own versions of, say, the Milgaussy blue and things like that, playing around with blues and greens and oranges and things like that. And it's okay, but actually, I think it looks really good, and it could be a daily beater watch. I suppose even for people who are quite into watches as well. So that's not meant to be damning it with faint praise at all. It was a hit for me, and I think it will do very well at its price point.
Yeah. You're revealing more and more about yourself as you go along in these episodes, though. I now see you in your shell suit wandering around various shopping centres, bottle of Buckfast in your hand. You're revealing something of the Will Youth
with his mum.
Northeast.
With my mum.
What was that? I can just imagine. I'm just getting a picture of you in your Northeast living before you were rescued to the private school system of Southern England. There we go. Alon, what did you reckon?
I'm not a fan of the Sprite, so therefore I'm not a fan of this one. I'm totally with Ripley. They could have done so much better, so much more fun. And with the behemoth of a Swatch group behind them, my God, come on, guys. Giddy up. And with Certina, I have the same creeping feeling I always have at Beaumercier. No, it's a rhetorical question. Would they have done better if they weren't squeezed into that pyramid, the bind of the big group in between all the brands? What if it was dealt with as a micro brand? You know what I'm saying? They have so many cool ingredients at both Beaumercier and Certina. And let me not even get started about Union. I mean, German brand with everything Swiss about it. With Hamilton, I'll forgive them because they've been rocking it ever since with Matthias Brechan, Sylvain Dola, and everything. So those are my 2 cents, and I think we should quickly move to the next one.
Okay, well, the next one will be the Tag Heuer Monaco as a classic, maybe. But before we go on to that, Kevin?
Yeah, I thought it was a maybe. I'll keep it short. Not a fan, basically. Too much of a homage to Rolex. Swatch Group can do better. Let's move on.
Yeah. Move on. Nothing to see here. Leslie, what did you reckon?
I think it's a nicer green than the Sprite. I think it's pretty. I think look at that little lovely little green hand there. It's like little Kermit the Frog color. It's lovely.
Somebody bring back Leslie. Leslie's becoming a leprechaun. He's like, it's nice. It's a nice wee green. It's green. I'm from Dublin, therefore I must love it.
I'm wearing a green jacket as well.
Very good, very good, very good. Right, let's do our final, some classic hit miss maybe. Very briefly, very quickly, and I'm going to get Simon to justify the existence of this watch. So this is going to be I've just shared the vast range of Tag Heuer Monacos that have been reported about on aBlogtoWatch. There appears to be roughly 17 pages of reports in and around the Tag Heuer Monaco. So very quickly, Simon, what's this watch about before we vote?
Well, you want me to talk about the Monaco quickly, right? Okay, that's going to be a challenge in itself. And I can show you 2 examples here as well.
Right, okay. Bamford one and a classic one, yep.
Yeah, exactly. Caliber 12 and Caliber 02. Okay, so the reason that I think that the Monaco is a hit is it's just a heritage story for me that really engages me. I mean, I don't know how many of you know it, but developed in launched in 1970. It was actually the first watch that had a brand ambassador. So Jack Heuer used Joe Siffert as the brand ambassador for it. Originally, it also was purported to be the first automatic chronograph. Also, I believe the first water-resistant watch with a square case. Do I need to go on? I just looked.
First water-resistant watch with a square case. That's a stretch, is it not? This watch is extra special because it's watches but it's square and water-resistant. You don't get many of them. Right, let's give it to the vote. So you've got to imagine you're back at the launch of this particular watch. You're seeing it for the first time. You're wearing it for the first time. Are you giving it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Hit, maybe. Simon, we're assuming he's giving it a hit. Okay. Pete, talk to me.
Yeah, this is a hit. I didn't have time to race across and get my Monaco, so I'm biased. I've got a thumb on the scale. I love this watch for every reason that I said the Certina was a miss. It's got such a point of view, such a personality. It's just a wonderful collection of ideas. I love this watch.
Okay, Simon, you've already given your excuses as to why this is a hit, so we're not coming back to you. You just have to.
No, that's fine.
You've said everything that can be said. Ripley, how'd you vote?
I'm pretty sure it's a hit for me. I'm pretty sure it's not the first water-resistant watch with a square case because the Omega Marine, like its first water resistant watch had a rectangular case. Granted, it was a case for the watch itself, but maybe the first square cased chronograph with a water resistant. At this point, we're getting to like Bulgari's records. It's the ultra thinnest, most perpetual with a sap. You know, we're getting really nebulous there, but it's still a hit for me. At every point in my life that I've seen the Monaco before I was working with watches, every time I'd see it, I'd like it, even if it didn't really register with me. When I was a young kid, I saw it on Steve McQueen's wrist, and it looks different. It catches your eye, even if you just kind of like watches, you see it, you're like, oh, that's cool. And then I kind of forgot about the Monaco. You'd see it here and there, be like, oh yeah, that one again. And then fast forward, you see it on the Walter White's wrist in Breaking Bad. Totally different context, totally different character, totally different Monaco. Now it's the tag Monaco. You got the crown on the opposite side, drastically different watch. And I'm still looking at it going, well, yeah, that's cool. That's, it doesn't make sense. It's not the most practical chronograph. If you want a practical chronograph from Tag, go get a Carrera or something. But, when in the realm of unique, iconic pieces, it stands there alone. And whether it was in 1970 or now, sometimes you just want to buy the watch that tickles your pickle. And that's the Monaco for me. So I'm a big fan of it regardless.
Amon, is your pickle being tickled by the Monaco?
I'm like Ripley. Ripley is on par today. He's get your tickle on. It does. I usually don't like square watches, rectangular. My first ever square watch was and still is a Monaco. I'm looking at the Nomos Tetra, but I never pulled the trigger. Rectangular took me forever. Love the reverse, so never owned one. I actually pulled the trigger on the Fears Archival 1930. So, but yeah, the Monaco does it for me.
Great stuff. I mean, I gave it a miss because I'm sorry, it fits nobody. This watch doesn't fit anybody. It looks great, but you can't wear it. I'm sorry, it's too tall. You bash it into everything. It just doesn't. It looks great. I'll grant you, it looks great on other people, but when you're actually wearing it yourself, it's like, this is a monster. It's just doesn't work. So there you go. That's just my truth for today. But Kevin, tell us what your truth is for today.
I put it as a maybe. I do like the design. And I do like one or two of the range, but I mean, obviously the best one they ever did was the Reverso, the 1969 Reverso, digital on one side, analog on the other, and I nearly pulled the trigger on that. I really did. But powers that be, i.e. my wife, said no, don't be so stupid. And then I saw it again in 5 years later in a Sri Lankan airport. Of all places, but yeah, as you do, yeah. But it's a cool piece. It's not for me, but Tag Heuer are going from strength to strength, and to me, that is the best of the range.
Good stuff. And finally, Leslie, Will has left us.
It was the first decent watch I ever saw, basically. I mean, it was the first one I thought, my God, look at that. It was the first one I remember noticing. I mean, I would have noticed Rolexes before, but this really stood out. And I would probably never buy one. I've tried them on; they don't look good on me, but they look good on other people. And I think you asked, would this have been would I consider it a hit when I saw it coming out first? I would have thought, yeah, that looks really good on Steve McQueen or on whatever picture I would have seen. And so yeah, I think it's good. I mean, and I love all the different iterations they've done. There's a gorgeous red silver one that flashed up there earlier. Less keen on the Gulf one, but the classic blue. I did try to buy the black one at an auction, but I was outbid, so I didn't. Just as well, to be honest.
Rick, I find it funny that you're complaining about it being unwearable as the man who wears a Panerai like 99% of the calendar year.
My precious. See, it fits though, because it's curved. It's got round things, curved just like a person is curved.
Anyway. I mean, I've told you how small my wrists are, and that wears just so well to me. I love it.
Well, you're welcome to your Tag Heuer. I'll keep my Panerai. But anyway, there we go. Thank you all very much for joining us. If you want to see the extended stuff, do find the YouTube channel, aBlogtoWatch Weekly Live, for the extra reviews. And we will speak to you all again next week. Say goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.